זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
Well, welcome to the practical portion. I'm Charli Brown. I'm here to take you practically into this week's Parsha. We're talking about the portion. For those of you who are new to this, we go through a portion every week. And this week we're in Genesis 47:28 through 50:26. And those of you that hop into the other sections, we're in 1 Kings 2:1 through 12 and John 13:1 through 19. This is a short portion. It's a short portion, but it's a good one. It's really a good one. Some of you, this is our first week not sharing to the Facebook group the portion. We have actually moved. So if you happen to be watching this on my personal page, and just know that if you were before watching in the portion, we're no longer using that Facebook group. We have left, and we're using now a band. So reach out to me, or you can email us at info@therootedcafe, KAFE.com, and find out the band link to get over there, to get on our band channel. And we just found it works out a little better for us. We're able to serve our community of women that we disciple there. But those of you then who are watching here, though, welcome. It's really great to be here. It really is a blessing. And those of you who are blessed by these shows in Messianic Land, would you go in and bless them back? Would you bless them back by a couple things? One, praying for all of those who are putting it out there, doing the thing. You know, it could be a little scary sometimes. It also, you're putting yourself out there available to people to, make comments that sometimes aren't super nice. The second thing is praying for families, attacks on families that can happen even spiritually, right? I don't know about you guys, but this has been a hard winter on my family. If you can hear it, we're still dealing with it's like we're getting waves and waves of this respiratory junk that keeps happening in our family, just keeps hitting us in waves. And no, I am negative for any of those other things that you might be thinking. However, what else? Praying for the spiritual attacks, physical attacks. The second thing is, a quick little donation in there to help, because they are expensive. The gospel's free, but getting it to the nation, that pipeline is not free. So those of you who are blessed by the things happening with Messianic Lamb, by the gift that they give you every week. I know Mark and his family who spend their life producing this for you, they would appreciate that. So thanks, guys, for that. Again, we're in Genesis 47. I think this time I'm actually going to do a little reading because it is such a short parsha that I'd like to do that. I just want to acknowledge most of us are operating on a biblical calendar, but we're in the year 5783 in a biblical calendar. I personally follow a Hillel calendar. We can acknowledge that the world experienced a new year. We're in 2023 for a Gregorian calendar, and a lot of new stuff happens. A lot of people are on this. We go through it. We go through it during Rosh Hashanah. We do a lot of self-reflection. We do a lot of time where we're thinking about what are things in our lives do we need to change? What are some intentions we need to change? And one of the things that I heard that was beautiful is someone was talking about looking back at the last year. They were saying, look back at the last year and where did you see the fingerprints of the Holy One? Where did you see his fingerprints last year? I'm curious. I'd love to hear in your comments. Comment wherever you're listening from. If you see a spot you can comment, go in there and comment for me. I'd love to see. If I'm seeing it live, I'm going to keep an eye out for anyone over on my personal Facebook page. And I know we have the Rooted Cafe's main page. You can see us, or on the Lamb. Go in there and make a comment, because I'm curious. Where did you see his fingerprints this past year, Gregorian? We're talking about, I'm just going to say Gregorian because we're not we're halfway through almost our year. But where did you see his fingerprints? And I'll mention here, I kind of like having this new year because it reminds me of the things that I spent time with him on during my New Year's at Rosh Hashanah, when I spent time during that season of contemplation, during that time with him. It reminded me, when we come to this new year, this Gregorian New Year, it reminds me to go back and how am I doing? It's a checkpoint for me. How am I doing with those things as a reminder? So, okay. Where did you see his fingerprint? And then where are you wanting to see his fingerprint going forward in the future? What's in this future? Where are you wanting to see his fingerprint going forward? And I think it's a really good thing to sit in and think about. And even as well, maybe we can incorporate that a little bit today. My husband and I talked about this, and he said, the place I'd love to see his fingerprint on, he mentioned um, Ed Harris and his wife, Hava Harris. Ed was on the show a few weeks ago, and he mentioned a comment that his wife Hava had made, and my husband brought it up yesterday or day before, and he said, "I would like to see that we are making his name famous in our lives and in our home." And what does that mean? Like, oh, he needs our help? No, not that. But we spend a lot of time in our lives where we are dealing with schedules, we're dealing with counseling, maybe we're dealing with teaching classes, we're dealing with making sure that we're aligning all these things. And I'm, operating a corporation, I'm operating a ministry, I'm writing a book, I'm doing all these things. We spend so much time do all these things, getting kids to certain places, making sure everyone's where they need to go. But are we making his name famous? When people see us when we walk in the door, do they know how famous he is in our lives, that he's the most important thing in our lives? Are we making him the most important thing in our homes? Is he famous in our homes? Tell me what that means to you. I'm curious of what that means to you, because I think that Yaakov, does a great job here as we go into this portion of making his name famous. And I want to spend time on that. So let's just start. So we're in VAYECHI, Genesis 47:28. And I'm going to just start right there. And Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim 17 years. So the length of Yaakov's life was 147 years. And the time for Israel, interesting, here we go. We're teetering back and forth between the names again. We talked about this last week. The time for Israel to die drew near, and he called his son Yosef and said to him, "Now, I have found favor in your eyes. Please put your hand under my thigh and show loving commitment and truth to me. Please do not bury me in Mitzrayim, but I shall lie with my fathers, and you shall take me up to Mitzrayim and bury me in their burial place." And he said, or out of Mitzrayim, and bury me in their burial place. And he said, "I do as you have said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. I mean, this is important. I don't want to be left here. I'm going to die here, but don't leave my body here. And he swore to him. And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. And Yisrael bowed himself on the head of the bed. So he is, we see this beautiful little vignette of Joseph and Jacob, and him asking him for his final wishes. He's 147 years old, not as old as everyone else in his family. He mentions that to Pharaoh earlier. And then 48, he says, "And after these events, it came to be that it was said to Joseph, 'See, your father is sick.' And so he took to him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Yaakov was told, 'See, your son Joseph is coming to you.' And Israel straightened himself and sat up in his bed. And Yaakov said to Joseph, 'El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. And he said to me, See, I'm making you fruitful and shall increase you and make of you and your assembly of peoples and give this land to your seed after you as an everlasting covenant. And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Mitzrayim before I came to you in Mitzrayim, are mine. As Reuben and Simon, they are mine. Your offspring, whom you shall bring forth after them, are yours. And let them be called by the name of your brothers and their inheritance. And I, when I came from Padam, Rahel died beside me, and in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath. And it is the land of Beit Lahem. I want to stop. I'm going to stop right there and we'll see how far we get from here. he goes back and he says, the God El Shaddai appeared to me. He says that back in verse 3. El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me. El Shaddai. It's interesting. If he's saying a name, I always think there's going to be a reason. So I was like, okay, he's acknowledging that El Shaddai right here appears to me. I don't know how old you're listening, but if you're listening and you're old enough to remember Amy Grant, tell me, I want to hear. Yes, I remember Amy Grant. Amy Grant sang that song, El Shaddai. Do you guys remember the El Shaddai song she sang? And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful song. And that started playing in my head. I'd love to sing right now, except for it's going to sound really horrible with all this junkie going on. But she says, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age, you're still the same by the power of your name. El Shaddai, El Chemchone Adonai. I will raise and lift you high, El Shaddai. I sat in that name for studying for this. I sat in this name and said, Father, you are El Shaddai. And as I looked into this name, I'm gonna go over my notes with you as where I was at in this. And in the name means, if we look at it without the root, just the basic name of it, it's Shaddai, Shin, Dalet, Yod. For my Hebrew scholar friends, I'd love for you to spend some time on that. What's the hieroglyphic of that to you? The Shin, the Dalet, and the Yod. We have that fire, we have the doorway, that passageway, and we have the Yod connecting. This is who he is. This is who he is. And it's translated as the Almighty One. It's translated as God Almighty. It's translated as sufficient. He's the one who gives strength. In Genesis 17:1, God introduces himself to Abram. He wasn't Abraham yet, to Abram as El Shaddai. He introduced himself often here as El Shaddai until we get to Moshe. And then he says, I introduced myself as El Shaddai to your forefathers. And then he gives him the name. Okay, but I'm not going to go. He introduces him in Genesis 17:1. Just some quick facts that I found. In Exodus, I only saw like one time in Exodus where he tells again Moshe that he was El Shaddai to his forefathers. I didn't find El Shaddai in Leviticus in any times. I didn't find him in Deuteronomy any times. I didn't find him referring to himself as El Shaddai or El Shaddai. If you see something different, please correct me. I'm open. I'm available. Please give me feedback. But in Numbers, 2 times. I did find that Ruth, in the book of Ruth, Naomi, she refers to El Shaddai dealing with her. And he has dealt with me, so call me Mara now. It's talking about, we see that word in El Shaddai, the mighty one, or that the root of that word, it's that he is protected, but he's the authority of who he is, right? Okay. And in Job, he was El Shaddai all over the place through Job. All through Job, I just grabbed Job 5. He says, don't despise the chastening of El Shaddai. There were so many in Job. You can go in and look in your Blue Letter Bible, you go into Strong's, and you can see there's so much. In Psalms, I saw it a couple times when El Shaddai is referred to. Joel is the last one that I found. In Joel 1, it was the last use that I found in the Old Testament. But in in Psalms 91, it's so beautiful because it's one of the verses many of us have memorized. Are you guys memorizers? Because I want to encourage you to do that. I was speaking to Ed yesterday and we were talking about that, and he has a group that they're meeting and they're actually memorizing scriptures and then meeting together and just saying their memory verse for the week to each other, the one that they memorized for the week, so that each one of them will have memorized 52 verses this year. And just hearing it from each other, they've also heard the word, all the words. So can I encourage you to do that? Would you memorize a verse a week? Because that's one of the things in this Hebraic movement. In this, I found that we have forgotten to memorize the word. Now I've heard now which version do I memorize? Do I memorize it in Hebrew? Do I you're missing the point. Pick your favorite version. Memorize the verse so you're getting his word in your heart. So you're getting it. I mean, I believe that the word is written in your DNA. But what I love is that as you've memorized verses, isn't it fun? I grew up as a child memorizing like crazy. I believe that's why Joseph was able to sustain himself in such a deep culture of paganism, a deep culture of polytheism, a deep culture of everything that he was not, is because he grew up in the tents. He grew up studying, memorizing the word, knowing who God was, knowing who he was in him, right? He knew. Are we doing that? I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you in that today. I want to encourage you in that, the memorizing and getting his word in, because there is nothing like when I'm studying and all of a sudden I'm studying something and then these little verses start popping up that I have memorized as a child, as I have memorized through my life. Has that happened to you? I want to celebrate you if that's happened to you. I want to celebrate that. And I want to challenge you to keep doing that. Keep on. Keep on keeping on. I want you to keep on memorizing those verses. Because as you do that, it's amazing how he then connects those things together. And this is the one that popped up. And many of you, this will pop up to you. The pop up was in Psalms 91. And we know that verse as he that dwells in the secret place, in the shadows, in the covering of the Most High, he'll abide in him. He's in the shadow of El Shaddai. This is a verse that we hear David talking about that. What happens when we're under his wing? He provides for us. He feeds us. He protects us. We're living in a world full of chaos. And we hear Jacob right now saying, El Shaddai appeared to me. He appeared to me. So he appeared to me, the one that I could run into that fortress, run under his wings. It's the same of who he was when he was brooding over the waters. How do I bring this all together to bring them close to me? If we run into his wings, if we run into the shadows of his wings, he's calling all of us to a closeness that we've not experienced before. We're distracted by counterfeit. We're distracted to get close to other things, to spend time with other things. But he's calling you and he's calling me as El Shaddai to be the one who is the refuge that we can go underneath those wings and that he can get, as we're in there and we can hear his heart. We can hear what he needs and what he wants. He wants to reveal himself as El Shaddai and all the different names. But today, let's talk about El Shaddai. He wants to reveal himself today as El Shaddai so that you hear his heart, so that you're close to him. And then we keep on going. I'll just keep on walking. Here we go. Okay, he's talking about bearing Rachel, and she was buried in Bethlehem. And Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, "Who are these?" So he sees the sons. He says he's old. His eyes aren't great. He sees the sons, and he's like, "Who are these? Who be these? Who be you?" And I'm thinking about many of us who are grandparent. If you're a grandparent, I want to know. I'm a grandmama. I'm a grandma. I'm a yaya. And I can't imagine having not seen my granddaughters and having them brought to me and saying, "Who are these?" Now, was it like a cute, like, "Oh, who are these?" I don't think so. I think he didn't recognize them. Think about what these boys would have looked like. Think about it. I mean, I know there's a lot of you listening. There's a lot of you listening and can comment. Let me take a drink while you guys think about it for a second. I want you to comment right now for me. Tell me, what do these guys look like? What do these boys look like? What are they wearing? What are they wearing? What does their face look like? Is it painted? Do they look Hebrew? Do they look like a new, now? Well, they're not even Israelites yet. Well, close, right? They're. What do they look like? No, they look Egyptian. They're half Egyptian, so maybe their skin is darker. Maybe they have a different look. They're not going to look like the other boys, the other grandchildren. They're going to look different. So he's saying, who are these? Who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they're my sons, whom Elohim has given me in this place. So even in the midst of all of this, Elohim has allowed me to be fruitful and multiply. It doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter if we're in a situation. We get to bloom wherever we're planted. Even in this situation, Elohim has given me these sons, and he said, please bring them to me and let me bless them. And the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he was unable to see, and he drew them near him, and he kissed them, and he embraced them. He didn't say, can you have them go change their clothes? Can you get them to wash that coal off of their face? Can you make them not look so Egyptian so they can come near me and I can hug and kiss on them? I need to bless them. But before I do all that, could they go mikvah? And then they need to make sure they're clean, make sure they've gone through these rituals. Can you make sure you've done all the... No, that didn't happen, did it? He says, bring them to me. And Israel said to Joseph, I have not thought to see your face, but see Elohim only. Also has now shown me your seed. I didn't even think I was going to get to see you, let alone I now get to see your seed. I get to see the fruitfulness of Elohim in your life. Not just that you're running the world, really, at that time. I mean, Mitzrayim, it was like running the world. He was, I don't just get to see you. I thought you were dead. But now I actually get to see the seeds. I'm seeing that there's things in our lives and we think, I thought I'd never see this to fruition. I never thought there would be reconciliation in this place. I never thought that was going to happen. But now, not only I have relationships in my life right now, not only do I see the reconciliation in their lives, but I also see the fruit of that reconciliation. I want to speak that life to you right now. There might be a giant division in your fellowship. There might be a giant division in your family. Maybe things have been taken away from you. I feel like we've talked about this a lot lately, but there's something that needs to be driven home. That he's saying that you may think something's been taken away and has dead and gone and died, but not only am I going to let you see that again, but I'm going to let you see the fruit of what was happening while it was out of your reach, while you weren't meddling in it. Because you can't take credit for it because it happened away from you. Because I have a thing and he is still doing that thing. He's faithful to finish what he starts. Faithful. Now, put me on a diet and I would say, yes, I'm a quitter. Our God is not a quitter. I might be on a new habit program and have quit over the years. Many of you this year, maybe you've started this year and you're one of you've started some New Year's resolutions and you do that every year. Yay, fine. But most of the time those are gone within a month or two, right? That's not who our God is. Our God does not quit. There are things happening in the background. So what if we would be realizing that if this would happen to him, he's not a respecter of persons. Of course it's happening for me. Father, thank you. That person is not in my life right now. But I thank you for the fruit that's happening, the reconciliation that's going to be down the road. And you are going to allow me to see the fruit of what you're doing in the background. I thank you, Father, for the people you're bringing into their life, the favor you're giving them, the way that you're growing them up because you're faithful to finish what you start. Thank you, Father. What if that is our outlook? What a great way to live. What a great way to live. Instead of griping and complaining and grumbling about what we don't see and what we can't have and what's broken and what was taken away and how depressed and sad I am. What if we can remember The righteous are not forsaken. He's with you. He's with them. Father, thank you. That ministry that was taken away from me, that opportunity, that job that was taken away from me. You're doing something. I think it's dead, but you're doing something else in the background. So not only is it not dead, but it's reproducing. That's what Jacob's saying is not only were you not dead, but you're reproducing. You were having children. Okay, we'll keep going. So Joseph brought them from between his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand towards Israel to his left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel to the right hand. You guys think about that picture, to the right hand, the left hand. And he brought them near him, because we have an older Manasseh. Manasseh is the older, and then the younger is Ephraim. And Israel stretched out his right hand, and he laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, consciously directing his hands, even though he said he couldn't see. Okay, for Manasseh was the firstborn, and he blessed Joseph first, and he said, the Elohim, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who has fed me all my life long to this day, the messenger who has redeemed me from evil, bless the youths, and let my name be called upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them increase to a multitude in the midst of the earth. So I'm not going to spend any time on this, but I want you guys to go back and look at this. It's really interesting because in here, and I circled it, I made a big circle. He says, the Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak walked, the Elohim who has fed me all my life long. This day didn't take credit for all of his work, for all of the the sheep he's raised to feed his family. He's giving God the glory for everything. And then he says, the messenger, and in my scriptures, this scriptures version, it says, the messenger, capital M, who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the youths. I mean, it's interesting. So he's talking about Elohim, and then he switches and calls him the messenger. So I got stuck on that, and I'm still working on it. I would love to talk with some of you about it. What are you seeing about this? Is this the messenger he wrestled with? Was that God? Because he's calling him the messenger, the same messenger that came to speak with Abraham, that came and spent time with him. The messenger who redeemed me from all evil. Was it Yeshua? I don't know. Is he talking just about giving Adonai multiple names, just calling him Elohim and then calling him the messenger? It's interesting. Just a food for thought for you to go back in there and look at that. And let my name be called upon them. And he wants them to increase in all the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father had laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, he crossed his arms, right? It was evil in his eyes. He was like, no, you can't do that. And he took hold of his father's hands, and he removed it from the head of Ephraim and put it on the head of Manasseh. And Joseph said to his father, no, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn, but your right hand is on his head. But his father refused, and he said, I know, my son, I know. He also becomes a people, and he's also going to be great. And yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is to become the completeness of the nations. We see Ephraim in the becoming we see him leading the northern nations, as Jeroboam is from Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim, leading the northern nations, right, in battle. We see that happening. But again, the theme I'm seeing through this whole thing is we have to stop. I have to stop. I'm going to talk to myself. I have to stop thinking about saying what things have to look like. I have a picture, I have a movie, I have a thing where I'm dictating how things need to look. They need to be a certain way. They need to look a certain way. This is how things should be. They should do this, and you should do this, and it should be this way, and it should not be this way. And there's a place where, of course, we judge fruit, but I feel like most of the time I spend my time, if I judge something, and we all do it, I'm gonna confess it to all of you. I I judge it and I didn't pray first. I didn't ask the Father, "Father, show me in your eyes what's happening." Because again, if I were in this situation and I was standing back, I would run in, "Wait, wait, 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 wait. You got a couple, you can't do this. These are Egyptian boys. Wait, wait, wait. They need to clean up and they need to change and this we need to do this differently. Wait, 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 wait." Or I'd be like Joseph and saying, "Wait, wait, 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 wait. You're doing it wrong. Dad, you got this wrong. You're switching your hands. You've crossed them. You've changed things. No, 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 no. You can't do this." I would have jumped in and tried to fix things because it wasn't the way it should be. And you guys hear me say this all the time. I have to stop shoulding on my friends and shoulding on my family. I'm shoulding on myself. I should do this. I should do this. It should be this way. And sometimes he calls you to do things or he switches things around because he knows us. For me, he knows I will get so caught up in my shoulds, how I should do something, that I forget to hear him. And that's part of that. He was not in the powerful wind, right? He wasn't in the earthquake. He's not in these loud shoulds all the time. Sit and listen. We see Yeshua walking things out, and that's the one thing that the religious leaders were like, he's not doing it the way he should. This is what it should look like. He went to spend time with a woman at a well. That's not what you should be doing. You shouldn't this shouldn't happen. He had to soften Peter's heart by showing him to be able what's clean and unclean so that he was able to walk into Cornelius's home. Otherwise, he would have said, "I can't do that. That's not how we should do it." Are you willing to go against what it should look like because the Holy One is moving your heart in that direction? I have a lot of friends that there's some things that they're calling me. We're chatting and he's calling some of us to do some things that seem Egyptian. They seem like he's asking us to do some things that don't look like it should. And as they transpose, maybe he allows me to share them. But I'm just going to say, what is he doing in your life? Are you close enough to him? Are you in the shot? Are you under the wings of El Shaddai that when he's turning and he's telling you to do it a different way, are you able to do that? Are you not under his wing and you're running off doing another way and you're missing the whole thing? You're missing the whole point of where he's trying to move you around and put you in the right direction because you're wanting to do it the way you should. Of course, you have a great heart for obedience, but most of us, it's a religious spirit. Maybe that's a good intention for us to set for the last part of our year, 5783. Maybe setting that intention that we're going to release a religious spirit and we're going to be in the wings of the shadow of El Shaddai. Not just because we need his provision, not just because we need him to protect us, not just because we want him to fight for us, not because we're just giving up our own ability to do all those things, but because we want to hear his voice. And we want to hear when he's saying, do it this way. And we're going to trust the sovereignty of him when he switches hands and he blesses something that's not supposed to be blessed first. When he allows things to come into our presence that don't look like they're supposed to look. It could get different. It could get scary. It could get challenging. We'll say maybe not scary, but it should be challenging. It'll challenge that religious spirit. It'll challenge what you should do. It's going to challenge that. But I believe that if we are hearing that clarion call to be close with him, we're going to feel the pounding of his heart. And we're going to just know in our knower that I'm going to do this and I don't like it, but I'm going to do this because I know in my knower that he's calling me to do this and he's pushing me into an area that I need to go into. Okay, so I want to stop right here because this is different. And we're seeing him come up and he's blessing. He didn't call all the other grandkids in, right? He didn't call in all the other 11 sons and say, bring me all the grand boys, bring the boys all in. I'm going to bless them all and do the blessing, crossing blessing. He didn't do all that. He just did this with Ephraim and Manasseh. which is a whole nother day study, right? But what he ended up doing is you heard him say, "You're going to give me these 2 boys, and then what the other boys you have, you can keep, but you're going to give me these boys." So there's an adoption happening here. Now, if you want to hear all the ancient Near East perspective on that, I recommend going back on Messianic Lamb. Listen to Gail Heaton in her through Ancient Eyes. Listen to her. She's talking this week about adoption. If you're in the Rooted Cafe, you want to go in and read her Parsha point. I want you to read into her ancient Near East perspective on what this is about. But I'm going to give you a current perspective, and it's personal for me. Okay? So I was adopted by my father. I have my biological mother, and she remarried. And my biological father gave up rights to me, and I never met him. And he signed that away. And so my adopted father, we had to go through a court process, right? And through the court process, was little. I vaguely remember going through the process and saying, "Yes, I want to be. He's my dad," and signing. They signed the papers, not me. I have the adoption papers still of him adopting me. So it was adoption process. So what happens during this adoption process is that in current times, which is, by the way, rooted in Roman times, because if you remember way back, if you happen to know this, when we hear, I want you to hear, this is again a great reminder of why it's important to memorize verses. There should be some verses that pop in your head in a minute. In Roman times, the reason that when they were speaking to the Romans and they're talking about you're not an orphan, you've been adopted, you've been grafted in. Because when Roman children they used to leave them out on like the hills if they didn't look a certain way, or they weren't what they wanted, because looks were very important, or they didn't, for whatever reason, we'll just say, they'd leave these babies on these hills, and they would take these children into the homes. But the Romans were bringing these kids into the homes, and they were required then to adopt them, because what was happening is the children were being brought in the home as slaves, and then it was free labor. They were raising them, and then they were free labor, and then they were just like a slave, and then they were just kind of kicked to the curb. Well, and what the Roman law put into effect is this: when you brought one of these children in, they were no longer, they had to be adopted. They were now grafted into your family, and they had the same and better, stronger rights, I'll use that word, than your biological children. So to this day, I was adopted. I'm telling you this story. My father, there was a point when one of his biological children came to him and was complaining that I had more rights, that I was doing more things, that at this time I had a key to the house. So I was coming and helping him do things. I used to work with him in his office. So I was helping with bookkeeping. I was helping him with his bills at this point in his life. He has since passed, and his name is blessed memory. But she was complaining and saying, "I should get a key too, because I'm your biological daughter. I have more rights than she does." And he stopped her, and he'd always say, "Hey, little lady, you're in trouble when my dad said, 'Hey, little lady.'" And it wasn't cute like John Wayne. It was like, "Okay, little lady, sit down." So he sat her down and he said, "Listen, here's something you don't understand. You might be my biological daughter, but because she's my adoptive daughter, she actually has more rights than you. Because I can disown you, but legally I can't disown her. I signed paperwork. I'm contracted with the I'm contracted that I cannot disown her, and that she has more rights than you because of that, because she can't be disowned, and you can be. I can't write her out of my will. She has to have equal rights and privileges than any biological child." And for me, when later he ended up telling me this story, he didn't know, and we did research later, didn't know about the Roman times. And then when you go back and read the story about these children, and we hear Paul, speaking to the Romans, we realize there's a reason, right? Because he's speaking to them, because they would get it. They would get this adoption process. They would get that when they're grafted in and they have been adopted by the King of the universe, It was a big deal. And as I thought about this situation with Ephraim and Manasseh, many of us on Shabbat nights, we're blessing our children. If on your Shabbat services, you're blessing, may your sons be like Ephraim and Manasseh. We don't say, may your sons be like Joseph. We don't say, may your sons be like Abraham or Isaac or Jacob. We don't say that. We say, may they'll be like Ephraim and Manasseh. That was prophesied over them in this section. And why would it be that these two needed to be adopted in? And I think it's because for my own, this is just my own opinion on this today, is that the time was lost with Joseph to be with his family to finish out that growth process. And he wanted to, while these boys were half Egyptian, with him adopting them in, it was redeeming that bloodline, redeeming the fact that now they're grafted in. So now they're no longer Egyptian. He's claiming them now, is that now they will be part of this heritage. They will end up becoming probably the line from the Israel as an Israelite. They will be his son, as opposed to the son of Egyptian priest's daughter and Joseph. They had been grown up. I don't know what they're raised to do. I don't know how they were instructed. I'm guessing. My guess would be that both, that Jacob secretly taught them things or didn't have to do it so secretly. He's powerful. Who cares? But anyway, we can talk about this. Y'all discuss. Tell me what you think. Let's come back. So he comes back. Where are we at? He says he's going to bless him. All right. And then Joseph says to his father, not so, my father, for this is the one, his firstborn. And he says, no. And then he says, and he blessed them on that day, saying, in you, Israel shall bless. It's interesting, I think, when he's operating in his nation, when he's operating as the nation of Israel, he refers himself to Israel, or it's referred to here as Israel when he's operating in that capacity. And when he's operating as just the dad, he's Jacob. That's one of the things I kind of noticed. I don't think it's the only reason, but it's one of the things I noticed. And Israel said to Joseph, see, I am dying, but Elohim shall be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers, which is a prophetic word. We know that what's going to happen. I mean, we're at the end of this. We're at the end of this book, and we start Exodus next. Woo! Can you believe it? Gah. And I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. So he's giving this so that his both sons will have a portion. There's been made an allowance. There's things that are in my life that I know where I have felt like an orphan, where I felt like I was abandoned, where I felt like I was cut off from my family, where I've been cut off from things, people, opportunities that I thought were mine to have. And I realized that God has made a provision for an inheritance generationally, for things that are to happen that are out of my understanding. Because of someone else's war, these kids are standing on the shoulders of their grandfather's war. You stand on the shoulders of all of these patriarchs, the wars that they have fought for you, the grandparents you may have had that have been on their knees praying for you and interceding for you. They have been on their knees. You stand on their shoulders. And these two boys get to now stand on the shoulders and receive that inheritance now from his fight with the Amorites and that sword. And start in 49. And Jacob called his sons and he said, gather together so that I declare to you what is to befall you in the last days. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel. So I'm the dad Jacob, but I want you to listen to me also as the father of a nation. Reuben, you are my firstborn and my power and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of exaltation and the excellency of power. Boiling like water, you do not excel because you went up to your father's bed and then you defiled it. We know what that's all about. And he went up to my couch. So he's like, that's your inheritance. You took it from my bed. Shimon and Levi are brothers. Their weapons are implements of violence. We know about their shenanigans. Let my being not enter their counsel. Let my esteem not be united to their assembly, because they killed a man in their displeasure, and they lamed an ox in pleasure. They have issues with integrity. They have issues with wisdom. Cursed be their displeasure, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I divide them into Jacob and scatter them into Israel. We see for sure the Levites, right, are scattered. We see that they were scattered to serve amongst all the nations. They were scattered to serve everyone. You, Yehuda, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies, and your father's children bow down before you. Yehuda is a lion's cub from the prey. You have gone up, my son. He bowed down and he crouched like a lion, and like a lion who does rouse him. The scepter shall not turn aside from Yehuda, which we see all the way through our Messiah, nor an inscriber from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Upon him, and to him is the obedience of people. Biting his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine and his robes in the blood of grapes. That's a fun thing to study out. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun dwells as the seashore. He is for a haven for ships, and his border is unto Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between two burdens. And he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, and he inclined his shoulder to bear a burden, and became a subject to slave labor. Dan rightly rules. I mean, can you imagine sitting there and your dad's telling this? You're like, okay, thanks, Dad. Dan rightly rules his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan is a serpent, by the way, an adder by the path, and bites the horse's heels so that its rider falls backwards. I have waited for your deliverance, O Jehovah. Gad, a raiding band raids him, but he raids its heel. It's if you can take some time, even through this year, you could take each one of these prophetic words on each one of the sons and go through and now and look at their lineage and go through and see where these have all played out as he's prophesied them. Bread from Asher is rich, and he gives delicacies of the sovereign. Naphtali is a deer let loose, and he gives words of elegance. Yosef is an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree, by a fountain. His branches run over a wall. And the archers have bitterly grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow remained in strength. You know, I saw this that he was put into a wall, and his branches have had to come out from a wall that wasn't his, right? He's in Mitzrayim. His children had to come out from there, which didn't look like what we thought it should look like. But even though all the people shot at him, even though everyone hated him, his bow remained in strength. Now we know that we use the word sin, but we know that the word chatat is missing the mark. It's an archery term. And if your bow remains straight and you stay the course, if the Torah is the instruction manual to help you hit the center so that you can walk in the center and your bow will remain straight. He's saying it says strength. And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From the El of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens from above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the beasts of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the limits of the everlasting hills. They are on the head of Yosef, and on the crown of the head of him who has separated from his brothers. He was separated from his brothers. All of them got all their stuff, except for a few of them had some nice things to say, but this is a really long blessing that he gives over Yosef. Benjamin is a wolf that tears in the morning. He eats prey, and at the night he divides the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them. And he blessed them, and he blessed each one according to his own blessing. And he commanded them, and he said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me by my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan. which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial site. They were buried there. They buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Yitzhak and Rivkah, his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field, we remember Rachel was buried in Bethlehem. The field purchased and the cave which is in it from the sons of Heth. And when Yaakov ended commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into his bed and he breathed his last, and he was gathered to his people. And Joseph fell on his father's face and he wept over him and he kissed him. And this is the part I want to just get into quickly. And Joseph commanded his servants and physicians to embalm his fathers. So the physicians embalmed Israel. We're going to go on to see that he was embalmed and he wept. And we'll finish this out here. He was embalmed. They didn't embalm. To this day, they don't embalm. Many of you, I know if you've been to a Jewish funeral, if you've been to some of your friends' funeral now, as you're walking in this faith, they're not embalmed. Again, why isn't anyone rising up and saying, this is how we're supposed to do it? We shouldn't be embalming him. We'll just carry his bones. Why are you embalming him? That's a very Egyptian thing to do. But it continued to happen. I'm just really being hit lately that God is really working on me, that I have to be so careful of what I think are the should and shouldn'ts, and make sure that I'm walking in what he wants me to do and not what I think should or shouldn't be happening, and not judging if somebody's embalming or not embalming. And 40 days were completed for him, for so are completed the days of embalming. And the Mitzrites wept for 70 days. The Egyptians wept for Joseph's dad for 70 days. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, and saying, my father made me swear, saying that I am dying, bury me in my burial site, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. And now, please let me go bury my father in return. And the Pharaoh said, go. That's not what we're going to hear later, right? And the Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father, because he made you swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father. Now, I want you to imagine this caravan, and with him went all the servants of Pharaoh. All the servants of Pharaoh, not some, all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of Pharaoh's house, and all the elders of the land of Mitzrayim. We're not even talking about Joseph's family here. We're talking about the household of Egypt. We're talking about, it would be like the president, it would be like all the cabinets, all the assembly, the senators, everybody coming together, plus the servants, plus everybody coming, okay? All the house came, and his brothers and his father's house. Only their little ones and their flocks and their herds, they left those in the land of Goshen. Okay. And there they went with him, both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. Can you imagine this entourage coming with chariots and horses, and all the people and all these dignitaries are all coming, and they came to this threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Yarden, and they lamented there with a great and very heavy lamentation. And he performed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning of the threshing floor at Atad, they said, this is a grieving mourning for the Mitzrites. That is why its name is called Abel Mitzrayim, which is beyond the Yarden. And his sons did to him as he had commanded them, and his sons brought him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham brought for the field for Ephron, blah, blah, blah. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Mitzrayim, he and his brothers and all who went with him to bury his father's house. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, oh no, he's going to kill us now. What if Joseph hates us and pays us back all the evil that we did to him? And then they went to Joseph and said, before your father died, he commanded, saying, Did he say that? Did they just make this up? This is what you were to say to Joseph. I beg you, please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, and they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgressions of these servants of the Elohim of your father. Not their Elohim, but the Elohim of their father. And Joseph went and spoke with them. And his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, see, we are servants. And Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? And you inherited evil against me. You intended all this evil, not inherited, intended evil against me. But Elohim intended it for good. It's like we see when the blessings and the cursings, right? Standing between the two hills, we see Balaam wants evil, wants cursing, and we see there's only blessings able to come. Whatever, we are so worried and so tied up in things in our lives that we think that the things that are factioned against us, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you shall fail, because that is your inheritance as a child of the Almighty King, as Elohim, as El Shaddai, as Yahovah. He is your protector. He doesn't matter what's happening. It doesn't matter what people are saying. It doesn't matter what you feel like's going on about you. This is a Romans 8:28 moment. This is a reminder before we start this next book. It's a reminder. We always say, Hazak, Hazak, stay strong, stay strong. This is a time to stay strong in who you know you are, whose you know you are. You are the child of the Almighty King, the Almighty God, the provider. He's bringing everything into you, even though you can't see it. Can you praise him? Can you believe that even though you can't see it, he's doing a work, that he's working this all for your good? I feel like every moment is a Romans 8:28 moment. What can you right this minute stop and say, I have been worried, afraid, or complaining about this thing that's overpowered me. I'm going to lay this down at the altar, and I'm going to begin praising God, because I don't know what's happening on the backside. I'm going to start praising him in the middle of this, because I know that he is the God who's asleep in the bottom of the boat, and all he has to get up and say, peace, be still. I know that he's the God that even though I can't see what's happening, there's something happening on the background, and I'm going to get to see the fruit of it later, because something has to be happening, because that's how much my God loves me. And he finishes what he starts. You guys be blessed. Have a great week. I can't wait to see you next week, and we get to start a new book together. Shalom.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך, שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.